Welcome to Elizabeth's Stories. Today we follow Margaret Caldwell, a 67-year-old grandmother abandoned by her daughter in Scotland, who transforms betrayal into triumph. She uncovers a family legacy, builds a thriving antique business, and finds empowerment. Subscribe and hit the bell for weekly stories of resilience and truth. Share your thoughts below. Let's start the stories. The wind howled like a banshee through the desolate Scottish Highlands, carrying with it the sharp scent of heather and something older, something that whispered of secrets buried in the earth. I stood alone, my suitcase, a heavy anchor beside me, on a patch of uneven grass that passed for a village square in Kilbride. The gravel still crunched in my ears, the echo of the rental car's tires as it sped away. My daughter Jessica's laughter slicing through the air like a blade forged from betrayal. "Get out," she'd sneered, her voice venomous. "And let's see how tough you feel when you have no way home." Her husband, Brian, had gunned the engine, spraying stones in a final act of dismissal. The taillights vanished around a bend swallowed by the mist, leaving me stranded in a place that felt like the edge of the world. At 67, an American grandmother with nothing but $43 in my wallet and a dead phone, I realized my own flesh and blood had declared war on me. I'm Margaret Caldwell, and this is how I was abandoned in a foreign land, betrayed by the daughter I raised alone, only to discover a strength I didn't know I possessed, and a mystery that would change everything. 3 weeks earlier, the call had come late at night, the kind of call that stirs both hope and unease. Jessica's voice was bright, too bright, like polished glass, hiding cracks beneath. "Mom, Brian's company is sending him to Edinburgh for a conference," she said, "and we thought it'd be wonderful if you joined us for a family vacation afterward." The word wonderful snagged in my mind, a red flag I ignored. Jessica hadn't called anything about me wonderful since she was a teenager, her affection replaced by eye rolls and demands for money or babysitting. But hope is a dangerous thing, and I a fool for love. Let it blind me. When was the last time my daughter had invited me anywhere? When had she last wanted me close? Not as a utility, but as her mother, I booked my flight from Minnesota, packed my best clothes, a tailored pantsuit, a new scarf, a camera to capture memories I naively thought we'd cherish. I imagined laughter, shared meals, a chance to mend the fraying threads of our bond. But the moment I stepped off the plane in Edinburgh, the air felt wrong, heavy with an unspoken tension. Jessica's eyes flicked over my outfit, her lips curling into a smirk. "Really, Mom? You're going to dress like a librarian the whole time we're here?" Brian always, her shadow, chuckled from behind his phone. "At least she matches the scenery, all those old castles and dusty museums." I bit my tongue, swallowing the sting. I'd come to reconnect, not to fight. For 3 days, I trailed them through Edinburgh's cobbled streets, a ghost in their orbit. They dined at restaurants I paid for, shopped with my credit card, booked separate hotel rooms for space. I smiled through it all, clinging to the delusion that this was my chance to be part of their lives again. But every glance, every sigh told me I was an intruder, tolerated only for what I could provide. Yesterday morning, Brian announced a scenic drive through the Highlands. "You'll love it, Margaret." He said, his voice dripping with condescension, using my full name as if it were a weapon. "Very authentic Scottish experience." I nodded, eager to please, and climbed into the back seat of their rental car. The Highlands were breathtaking rolling hills, cloaked in purple heather, ancient stone bridges spanning streams that glittered like liquid crystal under the September sun. For a fleeting moment, I felt grateful, lulled by the beauty and the rare quiet between us. Then Jessica turned her face, a mask of irritation I knew too well. "Mom, Can you please stop taking pictures of every sheep and rock we pass? You're making the car shake. Her tone was sharp, a blade honed over years of resentment. I'm documenting our trip, I said softly, trying to keep the peace. For what? Brian scoffed. Your Instagram account that doesn't exist. They laughed, a shared cruelty that cut deeper than I'd expected. For my memory, I said, my voice barely a whisper, I want to remember this time with you. Jessica's expression shifted, hardening into something alien, something I didn't recognize in the girl I'd raised. She exchanged a look with Brian, a silent signal that made my stomach twist. Actually, Mom, she said, her voice cold as the Highland wind. There's something we need to talk about. The car slowed, pulling onto a narrow dirt track that led to nowhere. My heart pounded, sensing the storm before it broke. We've been patient with you for years, Jessica said, her words spilling out like a rehearsed speech. But you're suffocating us. They're always wanting to be included, acting like we owe you something just because you're our mother. The accusation landed like a physical blow. I opened my mouth to protest, but Brian cut in. You're a burden, Margaret. We can't keep carrying you. The car stopped in the middle of Kilbride, a village so small it barely existed, a cluster of stone buildings, a crumbling church, and sheep bleating in the distance. Get out, Jessica said, her voice devoid of warmth. I stared at her, searching for the daughter who once clung to me during thunderstorms, but she was gone, replaced by this stranger with eyes like steel. You can't be serious, I whispered. Brian opened the car door from the driver's seat. Out. Now. Numbly, I grabbed my suitcase and stepped onto the grass. The door slammed shut, and the car roared away, leaving me in a cloud of dust and disbelief. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the wind and the distant bleat of sheep. I stood there, gripping my suitcase, my mind reeling. My daughter. The child I'd raised alone after her father left us when she was 12 had abandoned me in a foreign country like a discarded toy. The irony was bitter. I'd spent years shielding her from pain, only to be cast aside like something worthless. My first coherent thought was practical. I needed a phone. My own was dead. Its battery drained somewhere between Edinburgh and this forsaken place. My second thought was darker, spiraling into self-doubt. What kind of mother raises a daughter capable of such cruelty? The question gnawed at me, but I pushed it aside. Self-pity wouldn't get me back to civilization. I hefted my suitcase and started walking toward what I hoped was the village center, a generous term for a handful of weathered stone buildings. The air was cold, the sky heavy with clouds that seemed to press down on me, amplifying my isolation. The first building was a ruin, its windows dark and lifeless. The second, a house, was equally silent, its curtains drawn tight. The third had a faded sign, Kilbride Post Office. I tried the door, but it was locked, the wood cold under my fingers. Wonderful, I muttered, and immediately heard Jessica's voice in my head mocking the word. Even here alone, her criticism haunted me. Then I heard it, a faint thread of music. Not the ghostly wail of bagpipes, but something real, alive, with the strum of strings and the hum of voices. It came from up the street, a beacon in the gathering dusk. I dragged my suitcase over cobblestones that felt ancient, each step heavy with the weight of betrayal. The music grew louder, leading me to a building that seemed marginally more alive than the rest. A creaking wooden sign read, "The Shepherd's Rest Inn and Public House." Through grimy windows, I saw warm light and the silhouettes of people inside, their laughter, a stark contrast to my solitude. I hesitated outside the door, my hand hovering over the handle. What could I say? Excuse me, my daughter just abandoned me like garbage. Can I use your phone? The words sounded pathetic even in my head. But the wind was biting, and standing here wouldn't solve anything. I pushed open the heavy door and stepped inside. The room fell silent as if I'd tripped an invisible switch. 6 or 7 faces turned to stare locals by their weathered clothes and curious eyes. I stood there, an American grandmother with a suitcase, an intruder in their world. Evening, I said, forcing confidence into my voice. I'm sorry to interrupt, but might I use your phone? I'm in a bit of a situation. A woman behind the bar stepped forward, her graying hair tied back, her eyes kind but sharp, like she could see through to my bones. American are ye? Her accent was thick, warm like a fire on a cold night. What brings ye to Kilbride with a suitcase at this hour? The absurdity of it hit me, and I laughed a brittle, half-hysterical sound that echoed in the quiet room. My daughter, I said, the words spilling out before I could stop them, just left me here because I'm apparently a burden she can't carry anymore. The silence stretched heavy with their stares. Then the woman. Moira, I'd later learn, spoke, her voice cutting through the tension. Well, she's a right fool, isn't she? Sit down, lass, and tell us what happened. I sank into a chair, the suitcase at my feet, and the story poured out over a cup of tea so strong it could wake the dead. I told them about Jessica's invitation, the trip, the cruel words, the abandonment. They listened without judgment, their faces a mix of sympathy and outrage. Moira asked practical questions. Did I have money for a hotel? Could I get to Edinburgh? Did I want to call the police? The idea of police gave me pause. Reporting my own daughter felt like crossing a line I wasn't ready for, a betrayal of my own. No police, I said finally, but I'd appreciate directions to the nearest town with a hotel. Moira's expression shifted, her eyes narrowing. Nearest proper hotels in Stirling, 40 miles south. No bus service here, and a taxi'd cost more than you likely have. She was right. My $43 wouldn't cover a ride to the next village, let alone a hotel. But Moira wasn't done. We've a room upstairs we rent out sometimes, she said, her voice softening. Nothing fancy, but it's clean and warm, £20 a night, breakfast included. Relief flooded me, and I wanted to hug her. £20 I could manage. It would buy me time to think, to plan, to find a way out of this nightmare. As I followed Moira up the narrow stairs, my suitcase bumping against the worn banister, I caught my reflection in a cracked mirror. My hair was wild from the wind, my pantsuit wrinkled, my eyes wide with shock. But beneath the fear, something stirred, a flicker of defiance, like a spark waiting to catch fire. Jessica thought she'd broken me. She was wrong. The room was simple, a single bed with a woolen blanket, a wash basin, a window overlooking the square where I'd been abandoned. I sat on the bed, my mind racing. I needed to charge my phone, contact my bank, find a way back to Edinburgh, then home to Minnesota. Simple in theory, overwhelming in reality. But as I stared out at the darkening village, the wind rattling the window, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just abandonment. It was a challenge, a gauntlet thrown down by fate. And then, as if the Highlands themselves were listening, I noticed something odd. The mirror in the hallway had glowed faintly when I passed it, a shimmer I couldn't explain. I stepped closer, my reflection distorted by the cracked glass. For a moment, I swore I saw not just myself, but something else. A shadow, a figure gone before I could blink. My heart raced, not with fear, but with curiosity. Kilbride was hiding something, and so was I. Jessica had left me here to fail. Instead, she'd set me on a path to uncover truths I never imagined about her, about myself, and about a legacy waiting in the shadows. The room above the Shepherd's Rest was a sanctuary of sorts, its simplicity a stark contrast to the chaos of my heart. The single bed, draped in a thick woolen blanket, creaked as I sat staring out the small window at the moonlit village square, where Jessica had left me hours ago. The wind outside rattled the panes, whispering secrets I couldn't yet decipher. My suitcase lay open on the floor, its contents a reminder of the life I'd thought I was reclaiming, a life where my daughter still loved me. At 67, I was alone in a foreign land with $43 a dead phone and a betrayal that burned deeper than the Highland cold. But something else stirred within me, a quiet defiance, like a ember glowing beneath ash waiting for kindling to ignite. I'm Margaret Caldwell, and this is how I found solace among strangers, uncovered a shadow of treachery far darker than I had imagined, and began to sense that Kilbride held mysteries older than my pain. Moira the innkeeper, with graying hair and eyes that seemed to see through time, had offered me the room for $20 a night, breakfast included. It was a lifeline, a chance to catch my breath and plan my escape from this forsaken place. But as I sat there, my mind churned with questions. How had it come to this? How had the daughter I'd raised alone after her father abandoned us when she was 12 turned into someone capable of such cruelty? And why did the cracked mirror in the hallway downstairs flicker with a light that wasn't there, a shadow that moved when I didn't? I shook my head, trying to focus. Practicality was my anchor now. My phone needed charging, and I needed to contact my bank to secure funds for a flight home to Minnesota. The tasks felt daunting, but standing still wasn't an option. I unzipped my suitcase, pulling out a notepad and pen, and began listing what I needed to do: charge, phone call, bank, book, transport to Edinburgh, get home. Simple on paper, overwhelming in reality. As I wrote, the wind outside grew louder, carrying a faint hum, like a melody woven into the night. I paused, listening. It wasn't the music from the pub below, but something older, almost otherworldly, as if the Highlands themselves were singing. I stood and pressed my hand against the window, the glass cold under my palm. The village square was empty, bathed in moonlight, but the shadows seemed to shift, pooling unnaturally around the crumbling stone church across the way. For a moment, I thought I saw a figure, a woman in a long dark cloak standing near the church's ruins. Her outline was faint like smoke, and then she was gone. My breath caught my rational mind, dismissing it as exhaustion, but my heart whispered otherwise. Kilbride wasn't just a forgotten village. It held something ancient, something watching me. I turned away, shaking off the unease. I needed to focus on survival, not ghosts. Grabbing my dead phone, I headed downstairs where the pub was quieter now, the locals having dispersed into the night. Moira stood behind the bar, wiping glasses with a rag, her movements steady, but her eyes alert, as if she sensed my turmoil. "Thought you might need this," she said, producing a universal charger from a drawer. "Plug's over there by the fireplace." "Thank you," I said, my voice rough with gratitude. I plugged in my phone, watching the screen flicker to life. Moira poured a glass of red wine and slid it across the bar. "On the house," she said. "Ye look like ye need it more than most." I managed a weak smile, wrapping my hands around the glass. The warmth of the pub with its crackling fire and worn wooden tables was a balm to my frayed nerves. "You didn't have to take me in," I said. "You don't even know me." Moira shrugged, her eyes glinting with something unreadable. "I know enough." A woman abandoned in Kilbride with naught but a suitcase and a broken heart. That's a story I've heard before in one form or another. Besides, the Highlands have a way of looking after those who need it. Her words carried a weight I couldn't quite grasp, as if they hinted at a truth just out of reach. I sipped the wine, its warmth loosening the knot in my chest. "I don't know what to do next," I admitted. "My daughter, she left me here with nothing. I have $43 a dead phone and no idea how to get home." Moira leaned forward, her voice low. "Tell me what happened, lass. Start from the beginning." The story spilled out raw and unfiltered. I told her about Jessica's call, the promise of a family vacation, the way her disdain grew with every moment in Edinburgh. I described the drive through the Highlands, the cruel words, "You're a burden, Margaret," and the moment they drove away, leaving me in the dust. As I spoke, Moira listened, her face unreadable, but her eyes softening with empathy. The few remaining locals nursing their pints by the fire glanced over. Occasionally, their silence a kind of respect. When I finished, Moira poured herself a dram of whiskey and raised it in a mock toast. To daughters who think they know better, she said, her tone laced with dry humor. My own son in Glasgow keeps sending me brochures for assisted living facilities, as if running this place for 20 years has made me daft overnight. I laughed, a small, genuine sound that surprised me. To children, I said, clinking my glass against hers, who think they know what's best for us. She agreed, her smile fading into something more serious. But what your daughter did, that's not just cruelty. It's something darker. Have you thought about the police? The question hung in the air, heavy as the smoke from the fire. I shook my head. She's my daughter. Calling the police feels wrong. Like I'd be betraying her. Moira's eyes narrowed. Betraying her lass, she betrayed ye first. Left ye in a foreign country with nothing. That's not love. That's something else entirely. Her words struck a nerve, stirring the ember of defiance inside me. I wanted to argue, to defend Jessica, but the truth was undeniable. My phone buzzed, fully charged now, and I picked it up, expecting a flood of messages from Jessica, apologies, explanations, anything. Instead, there were a dozen notifications from my bank. Unusual account activity. Please confirm these transactions. My heart sank as I opened the app, my hands trembling. The screen showed a series of charges, hotel rooms, restaurants, a spa day, shopping sprees, all made while I was in Edinburgh thinking Jessica was visiting museums. My checking account was nearly drained, and when I checked my savings, the blow was worse. The $60,000 I'd saved over years was gone, leaving less than $800. I stared at the screen, my breath shallow. Moira, I said, my voice barely a whisper. She's been stealing from me. Moira set down her glass, her face hardening. Show me. I handed her the phone, and she scrolled through the transactions, her jaw tightening with each swipe. This isn't just stealin', she said finally. This is elder abuse, financial abuse. It's a crime, Margaret. She's been planning this likely for months. The word crime hit me like a physical blow. I'd raised Jessica alone, sacrificed everything to give her a good life, and now she'd orchestrated a betrayal so calculated it felt like a stranger's doing. How could she? I whispered more to myself than to Moira. Moira's hand rested on mine, steady and warm. Some people let greed twist 'em into something ugly. But you're not alone now. We'll sort this out, ye and me. Her kindness was almost too much, a stark contrast to the cruelty I'd endured. I nodded, unable to speak as tears welled up. Moira handed me a box of tissues and poured another glass of wine. No need for tears yet, she said. You've got fight in ye. I can see it. And Kilbride's got a way of helping those who fight. Her words carried that same cryptic weight, as if she knew something about this place that I didn't. I wiped my eyes, forcing myself to focus. I need to call my bank, I said. Figure out how much damage she's done and how to get home. Moira nodded. Use the pub's phone if you need it, but first eat something. You can't fight a war on an empty stomach. She disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a bowl of thick Scottish soup and a slice of fresh bread. The warmth of the meal grounded me, and as I ate, I dialed my bank's customer service number. After an eternity on hold, a representative confirmed my worst fears. Ma'am, you authorized these transfers to your daughter's account 3 months ago, she said. We have the signed documents in our files. Signed documents, I said, my voice rising. I never signed anything. The representative's tone remained calm, infuriatingly so. We'll need to investigate further. Can you provide any documentation proving the signatures were forged? I hung up my hands, shaking. Jessica hadn't just stolen from me. She'd planned it, forging my signature to drain my life's savings. The betrayal was no longer just emotional, it was a meticulously crafted theft. I told Moira everything, the words spilling out like poison I needed to purge. She listened, her face a mask of quiet fury. "That's not just abandonment," she said when I finished. "That's a crime, and family makes it worse, not better. They know how much it hurts because they know ye." I nodded, the weight of her words settling over me. "How long can I stay here with $43? I asked. Moira did the math aloud. "A week maybe if you're careful, but we've got a week to get you back on your feet. And I'm not letting an American grandmother get swindled by her own child without a fight." Her resolve was infectious, fanning that ember inside me into a flame. I wasn't ready to give up, not yet. "What do we do?" I asked. "Tomorrow," Moira said, her eyes gleaming with determination. "We start fighting back. But tonight, you rest. And keep an eye on that mirror in the hallway. It's older than this inn, and it's got stories of its own." Her words sent a shiver down my spine. I climbed the stairs to my room, pausing at the mirror. Its surface was dark now, no trace of the earlier glow, but I felt its presence like a sentinel watching me. I lay in bed, the wind's eerie melody filling the silence, and dreamed of a woman in a cloak, her face hidden, her voice whispering my name. She stood in the church ruins, holding a key that shimmered like starlight, and when I reached for it, she vanished, leaving only the words, "Find what's yours." The next morning dawned gray and damp, the sky heavy with secrets. Moira greeted me with coffee strong enough to wake the ghosts of Kilbride. "Sleep well?" she asked, her smile knowing. "Not really," I admitted. "I dreamed about a woman in the church ruins. She had a key, and she told me to find what's mine." Moira's hand paused, mid-pour, her eyes narrowing. "The church, ye say? That's St. Bride's, older than the village itself. Folks say it's a place where truths come to light if you're brave enough to look." Her words stirred something in me, a pull I couldn't explain. "What kind of truths?" "The kind that change ye," she said cryptically. "But first, we've work to do. Come with me." She led me out the back of the inn, down a muddy path to a stone building half hidden by overgrown brambles. It was ancient, its walls weathered but solid, its narrow windows like eyes peering from the past. Moira produced an iron key, its surface etched with strange swirling patterns that seemed to pulse under my gaze. "What is this place?" I asked as she unlocked the door. "Used to be a wool warehouse," she said, back when Kilbride was a stop on the sheep farming route. "My husband's grandfather bought it in the 50s, thought he'd turn it into something profitable. Never did. After he died, I locked it and forgot it until now." The door creaked open, revealing a cavernous space filled with dust-covered shapes. Moira pulled back a sheet, revealing a carved wooden chest that gleamed despite the grime. My breath caught as I ran my fingers over its surface, the wood warm, almost alive. "This is exquisite," I said, my old museum curator instincts kicking in. "Mahogany hand-carved, likely 18th century." Moira grinned. "I thought ye might say that. Ye mentioned last night ye worked in a museum 30 years handling historical artifacts." I nodded, surprised she'd remembered. "A lifetime ago, before Jessica, before everything. Skills like that don't fade," Moira said firmly. "And I've a proposition for ye. This warehouse is full of treasures, furniture, china, paintings, books. My husband collected it. I'll never had the heart to turn anyone away who needed to store something. I need help sorting it, figuring what's worth selling. If you help me, we split the profits 50-50. I stared at her stunned. You barely know me. I know enough, she said, her voice steady. I know you've been hurt, but you're not broken. I know you've got skills I don't, and I know this warehouse might be the answer to both our problems. I walked deeper into the space, pulling back more sheets. A set of Wedgwood china flawless. A stack of leather-bound books, their titles faded but promising. A small porcelain figurine that made my heart skip Royal Doulton early production worth hundreds if authentic. And then in the corner, a painting its frame ornate but tarnished. I brushed away the dust, revealing a Highland landscape, its colors vivid despite the years. In the bottom right corner, a signature, A. Nasmyth. My museum training screamed this could be Alexander Nasmyth, a master of Scottish art. If real, it wasn't worth hundreds. It was worth thousands. Moira, I said, my voice trembling with excitement, this could be a fortune. Her eyes widened. For that wee painting? For that Nasmyth, I corrected. But we'd need to authenticate it, and the rest of this. I gestured around the warehouse, my mind racing. This could take months. Good, Moira said, her grin fierce. Because I've got time, and now so do ye. As we left the warehouse, locking the door behind us, I felt a shift like the world tilting slightly. The key in Moira's hand seemed to glow for a moment, its patterns mirroring the ones in my dream. I glanced at the church ruins across the square, half expecting to see the cloaked woman again. She wasn't there, but the air felt charged, as if Kilbride was waiting for me to uncover its secrets and my own. Jessica thought she'd left me with nothing. She had no idea she'd left me at the threshold of something extraordinary. The Highlands were calling, and I was ready to answer. The warehouse behind the Shepherd's Rest was a labyrinth of shadows and secrets, its stone walls whispering tales of forgotten lives. Each morning, I stepped inside with Moira, pulling back dust sheets to reveal treasures that seemed to hum with their own energy, antique furniture, delicate porcelain paintings that held the weight of centuries. The air was thick with the scent of old wood and time, and every item we uncovered felt like a piece of a puzzle I was only beginning to understand. At 67, I'd been abandoned in Kilbride, Scotland, by my own daughter Jessica left with $43 and a heart shattered by betrayal. But in this dusty sanctuary surrounded by relics of the past, I was finding something I'd thought lost forever myself. I'm Margaret Caldwell, and this is how I turned abandonment into rebirth, unearthing a legacy that was both mine and older than memory, guided by the mysterious pulse of the Highlands and a strength I didn't know I carried. Moira's proposition had been a lifeline. She'd seen the spark of my old life as a museum curator in Minnesota, where I had spent 30 years cataloging artifacts and preserving history before Jessica and motherhood consumed me. Her offer to split the profits of the warehouse's treasures, 60-40, my insistence sealed with a handshake, gave me a purpose. But it was more than that. The warehouse, with its ancient key and cryptic etchings, felt like a call from something deeper, something that had been waiting for me in Kilbride's shadows. Each day began with coffee strong enough to wake the ghosts Moira always hinted at, followed by hours in the warehouse. We worked methodically, cataloging items with care. A set of Wedgwood china, flawless and shimmering under the dim light, could fetch thousands. A collection of leather-bound books, their pages yellowed but intact, whispered of first editions that made my curator's heart race. And then there was the painting, the Alexander Nasmyth landscape, its signature barely visible under layers of grime. I'd felt its pull the moment I uncovered it, as if it recognized me. When I touched its frame, a faint warmth spread through my fingers, and for a fleeting second, I swore I heard a woman's voice, soft and urgent. yours. I shook off the sensation, chalking it up to exhaustion, but the warehouse was alive with strange moments. The iron key Moira used to unlock the door seemed to glow faintly in the mornings, its etched patterns shifting like ripples in water. The cracked mirror in the inn's hallway flickered at odd hours, reflecting not just my face, but glimpses of something else. A cloaked figure, a glint of starlight gone before I could focus. And at night, my dreams were haunted by the woman from St. Bride's ruins, holding that same key, her eyes urging me to look deeper. "You're quiet today," Moira said one morning as we sorted through a stack of Victorian jewelry. Her hands calloused from years of running, the inn moved with precision, but her eyes watched me closely. "Dreams again," I hesitated, then nodded. "The woman in the cloak. She's always in the church ruins holding a key like yours. She keeps saying, 'Find what's yours.' It's unsettling." Moira's expression didn't change, but her fingers tightened around a silver locket. "St. Bride's is an old place," she said carefully. "Older than Christianity in these parts. Folks say it's a thin place where the veil between worlds is weak. If you're dreaming of it, maybe it's trying to tell you something." Her words sent a shiver down my spine. I wanted to dismiss them, but the warehouse, the key, the painting, they all felt connected, as if Kilbride had drawn me here for a reason beyond Jessica's cruelty. "What kind of something?" I asked. Moira shrugged, but her eyes gleamed with knowing. "That's for ye to find out, lass. But I'd wager it's tied to what's in this warehouse. Let's keep diggin'." We did, and each discovery fueled my growing sense of purpose. My museum training came alive, guiding me as I researched the item's provenance, cross-referencing auction records and historical texts on Moira's surprisingly robust internet connection. The Royal Dalton figurine I'd found was authentic, valued at $500, a small fortune for something so delicate. The Edinburgh crystal set we uncovered next was worth more than my car back home. But the Nasmyth painting was the crown jewel. If authentic, it could fetch $15,000 or more at auction, enough to fund my return to Minnesota, and then some. Yet something told me it wasn't just about money. The painting's highland landscape, with its vivid greens and storm-swept skies, felt personal, as if it held a piece of my soul. One afternoon, as we worked, Moira's neighbor's nephew Angus arrived from Edinburgh. A lanky man in his 30s, with sharp eyes and a quick smile. He ran a high-end auction house and had been after Moira for years to evaluate her warehouse. "You've been sittin' on a gold mine, Moira," he said, examining the painting with gloved hands. "This Nasmyth, if it's real, could be a game changer. But you'll need a proper appraisal. I know a woman in Edinburgh, Dr. Catherine Murray. She's the best for Scottish art." I nodded, my heart racing. "Can you arrange it?" Angus said, his gaze lingering on me. "But there's something about this painting, Margaret. It's got a presence, like it's waiting for someone." His words echoed the whispers in my dreams, and I felt the warehouse's air shift as if it agreed. We wrapped the painting carefully, securing it in Moira's ancient Land Rover for the trip to Edinburgh. As we drove, the highlands unfolded around us, their beauty both wild and haunting. The church ruins of St. Bride's flashed by, and I swore I saw the cloaked woman again, standing at the edge watching. Moira noticed my stare. "You see her too, don't you?" she said quietly. I swallowed hard. "Who is she?" "Not sure." Moira said, her voice low. "But the Highlands keep their secrets close. If she's showing herself to you, it's because you're meant to know something." Dr. Catherine Murray's office was in a converted warehouse in Edinburgh's Old Town, its walls lined with art that seemed to breathe history. A woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and gentle hands, She unwrapped the Nasmyth with reverence. "Where did you find this?" she asked, her voice tinged with awe. "In storage," Moira said, glancing at me. "Part of an estate collection." Catherine examined the painting with tools I recognized from my museum days: magnifiers, UV lights, delicate brushes. After an hour, she looked up, her expression unreadable. "It's authentic," she said. "Mid-period Nasmyth, circa 1820. The provenance aligns with his work in this region. At auction with proper documentation, I'd estimate 15,000 to 20,000. I gasped, my knees weak. Moira squeezed my arm, her grin triumphant. But Catherine wasn't done. "There's something else," she said, pulling up a database on her computer. "In 1987, this painting was reported missing from the MacLeod estate, part of a collection sold to settle debts. Not stolen, likely, but sold privately without proper records. You'll need to establish a clear chain of ownership before you can sell it." The name MacLeod hit me like a thunderbolt. I'd never heard it before, yet it felt familiar, like a word on the tip of my tongue. "MacLeod." I repeated, my voice unsteady. Catherine nodded. "An old Highland family, once prominent. Most of their estate was lost in the 80s. If you can trace how this painting ended up in your warehouse, you're clear to sell. Otherwise, it could be contested." As we drove back to Kilbride, the painting secured in the back seat, my mind raced. The MacLeod name, the cloaked woman, the key, they were pieces of a puzzle, and I was at its center. Moira glanced at me, her eyes knowing. "You're thinking about it, aren't ye, the MacLeod connection?" "It's too much of a coincidence," I said. "That name, it feels like it means something." "It does," Moira said cryptically. "The Highlands don't bring people here by accident. You were meant to find that painting, Margaret, and maybe more." Back at the inn, I threw myself into research, scouring online archives for anything about the MacLeod estate. The warehouse became my haven, each item a clue to a larger mystery. One evening, as I catalogued a set of silver candlesticks, I found a small locked box hidden beneath a pile of linens. Its surface was carved with the same swirling patterns as Moira's key, and when I touched it, a jolt ran through me like static electricity. I called Moira over my hands, trembling. "Have you seen this before?" She frowned, shaking her head. "Not that I recall. Try the key." I hesitated, then took the key from her. It fit perfectly, the lock clicking open with a sound that echoed in my bones. Inside was a bundle of yellowed letters tied with a faded ribbon. The topmost letter was addressed to Margaret MacLeod, Caldwell, Minnesota, USA, 1921. My breath caught. My name, my great-grandmother's name, a woman I'd barely known through family stories. "Moira," I whispered. "This is mine." She leaned over my shoulder, her eyes wide. "Open it, lass." The letter was written in elegant script, signed by one, Alastair MacLeod. It spoke of a gift, a collection of family heirlooms, including a Nasmyth painting given to Margaret MacLeod Caldwell upon her marriage to an American and her emigration to Minnesota. The words swam before my eyes. "These belong to you, Margaret, as a daughter of the MacLeod line. Keep them safe, for they carry our history, our strength." There were more letters detailing jewelry, china, and other artworks, all left in trust for Margaret's descendants. For me. I sat back, stunned. "I'm a MacLeod," I said, the realization sinking in. "This painting, these treasures, they're mine by right." Moira's grin was fierce. "Aye, and that changes everything. You're not just a guest in Kilbride, Margaret. You're part of its story." The discovery lit a fire in me. The warehouse was no longer just a job. It was a legacy, my legacy. Over the next weeks, Moira and I transformed it into a showroom, installing proper lighting and climate control to showcase the treasures. The Nasmyth painting was sent for professional cleaning, revealing colors so vivid they seemed to pulse with life. Each night, I researched, piecing together the MacLeod family history. My great-grandmother had left Scotland in 1921, carrying only a few possessions, leaving the rest in trust with her family. When she died, the connection was lost, the heirlooms forgotten in Kilbride's warehouse until now. But the mysteries deepened. The cloaked woman appeared in my dreams nightly, her voice clearer now. Claim. What's yours, Margaret? The key unlocks more than doors. One night, I woke to find the mirror in the hallway glowing again, its surface rippling like water. I approached, heart pounding, and saw her, the woman from my dreams, her face obscured, but her eyes bright with purpose. She pointed to the church ruins, and the mirror went dark. I told Moira the next morning, expecting skepticism, but she only nodded. "St. Bride's is calling ye," she said. "Ye should go. Take the key." I hesitated, but the pull was undeniable. That afternoon, I walked to the ruins, the iron key heavy in my pocket. The church was a skeleton of stone, its walls etched with symbols that matched the key's patterns. As I stepped inside, the air grew thick, charged with an energy I couldn't name. At the center of the ruins, beneath a broken altar, I found a loose stone. My hands trembled as I pried it free, revealing a small, hidden compartment. Inside was a locket, silver and ancient, engraved with the MacLeod crest, a stag beneath a crescent moon. When I opened it, a tiny portrait stared back, a woman who looked eerily like me, with my eyes my jawline. On the back, in faint script, were the words, "Margaret MacLeod, 1890. I clutched the locket, my heart racing. This wasn't just a family heirloom. It was a message, a link to a past that had been waiting for me. I returned to the inn, showing Moira my find. "You're tied to this place, Margaret," she said, her voice soft but certain. The MacLeods were keepers of old knowledge, protectors of the Highlands' secrets. That locket, that key, they're more than metal. They're power. Power, I echoed, skeptical but intrigued. "Aye," she said, "the kind that comes from knowing who ye are. You're not just a grandmother from Minnesota. You're a MacLeod, and Kilbride's chosen ye." Her words resonated, fanning the flame of my newfound strength. The next day, a man arrived at the inn unannounced. He was in his 70s, with white hair and a weathered face that spoke of a life spent outdoors. "Mrs. Caldwell," he said, extending a hand. "I'm Duncan MacLeod. I believe we're kin." The air seemed to still, the pub's warmth fading as his words sank in. "MacLeod," I said, my voice unsteady. "How did you find me?" "Word travels fast in the Highlands," he said with a chuckle. "Especially when an American starts asking about the MacLeod estate. My solicitor in Edinburgh mentioned you were researching our family's collection. I had to come." He carried a manila folder, its contents spilling onto the table documents. Photographs, an inventory list from 1921. "Your great-grandmother, Margaret MacLeod Caldwell, was my great-aunt," he explained. "When she left for America, our family gave her heirlooms as a dowry, including the Nasmyth painting. She came back in 1949, ill and unable to take them. They were stored here in Kilbride and forgotten until ye came." I stared at the documents, my hands shaking. Immigration records, marriage certificates, and the inventory confirmed it, the painting, the jewelry, the china, all legally mine. "Why tell me now?" I asked, suspicion creeping in. Duncan's eyes softened, soon. "I'm dying, Mrs. Caldwell. Cancer. I've been tracing our family, tying up loose ends. When I learned you were here, it felt like fate. The MacLeod legacy belongs to ye as the last of her line." The weight of his words settled over me. I wasn't just reclaiming treasures. I was reclaiming a heritage, a strength that had been dormant within me. Duncan spent hours sharing family stories, each one a thread weaving me into Kilbride's tapestry. By the time he left, I held proof of my ownership, not just of the painting, but of a collection worth hundreds of thousands of pounds. That night, Moira and I sat in the pub after closing the documents spread before us. "This changes everything," she said, her grin wide. "You're not just an antique dealer, Margaret. You're a MacLeod carrying a legacy." "It's more than that," I said, clutching the locket. "The dreams, the key, the mirror, they're all connected. I don't know how, but I feel it." Moira nodded. "The Highlands have a way of revealing truths when you're ready. You're ready now, lass." The next weeks were a whirlwind. We prepared for our first auction at Sotheby's in Edinburgh, scheduled for December. The Nasmyth painting, now cleaned and authenticated, was the centerpiece, its value confirmed at £20,000. Other items, crystal jewelry books, were cataloged and appraised, each one a testament to my family's history. The warehouse transformed into a showroom, its elegance a far cry from the dusty chaos I had first seen. My skills as a curator shone, and with Moira's local knowledge, we were unstoppable. But the mysteries lingered. The locket grew warm at odd moments, and the cloaked woman's voice echoed in my dreams. "Claim it all." One evening, as I worked late in the showroom, the mirror flickered again, and I saw her clearly. My great-grandmother, Margaret MacLeod, her face a mirror of mine. She pointed to the warehouse, and the vision faded. I searched the spot she'd indicated, finding a hidden panel behind a bookcase. Inside was a journal, its pages filled with her handwriting, detailing the MacLeod's role as guardians of ancient Highland relics, imbued with a power she called the Light of the Glen. I read until dawn, my heart pounding. The journal spoke of a bond between the MacLeods and Kilbride, a duty to protect its secrets. The locket, the key, the painting, they were more than heirlooms. They were keys to that power, a strength I was only beginning to understand. Jessica had thought she'd broken me, but she'd led me to my destiny. I was no longer just Margaret Caldwell, abandoned mother. I was a MacLeod reborn in the Highlands, ready to claim what was mine. The showroom of MacLeod and Caldwell Antiquities gleamed under the soft glow of new lighting, a far cry from the dusty warehouse it had been months ago. Each item, Victorian jewelry, Edinburgh crystal rare books, stood as a testament to my rebirth, a legacy reclaimed from the ashes of betrayal. At 67, I'd been abandoned in Kilbride, Scotland by my daughter Jessica, left with nothing but $43 and a broken heart. But now, standing in this sanctuary of my own making, I was Margaret MacLeod Caldwell, heir to a Highland heritage, keeper of secrets older than the stones of St. Bride's ruins. The locket I wore, engraved with the MacLeod crest, pulsed faintly against my chest, as if it knew what I was only beginning to understand. I was no longer just a mother betrayed. I was a force, and Kilbride had awakened me. I'm Margaret Caldwell, and this is how my daughter's return threatened to unravel everything I'd built. How the Highlands' mysteries deepened, and how I learned that strength is not just found, it's claimed. 7 months had passed since Jessica and her husband Brian drove away, leaving me stranded in Kilbride's village square. In that time, I'd transformed the warehouse into a showroom, sold a Nasmyth painting for £47,000 at Sotheby's, and uncovered my great-grandmother's journal, which spoke of the MacLeods as guardians of ancient Highland relics, imbued with a power called the Light of the Glen. The journal's words haunted me, as did the cloaked woman in my dreams, my great-grandmother Margaret MacLeod, urging me to claim it all. The locket and the iron key Moira used to unlock the warehouse seemed to hum with that same energy, their etched patterns glowing faintly at odd moments as if they were alive. The cracked mirror in the Shepherd's Rest hallway flickered with her image, her eyes urging me to look deeper. I was photographing a Victorian tea service, its silver gleaming like moonlight, when my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't seen in months, Jessica's. My heart stuttered a mix of old pain and new wariness. I'd heard nothing from her since she'd driven away, her laughter echoing in my ears. Why now, I let the call go to voicemail, my hands trembling as I set down the camera. The locket warmed against my skin, a silent warning. Moira emerged from the office, her sharp eyes catching my expression. "Trouble?" she asked. "Jessica," I said, holding up the phone. "She's calling." Moira's face hardened. "After 7 months of silence." "That's no coincidence, lass. What's she want?" "I don't know yet," I said, but the locket's heat told me it wasn't good. I played the voicemail, Jessica's voice small and hesitant, a tone I hadn't heard since she was a child. "Mom, it's me. I've been trying to reach you. I'm so sorry for what we did. Please call me back. I miss you." The words were everything I'd once longed to hear, but they rang hollow like a bell cracked beneath its surface. Moira snorted. "Misses ye, does she? After stealing your savings and leaving ye here. That's not remorse, Margaret. That's a scheme." I nodded, the ember of my strength flaring. "I'll call her back, but not yet." I needed time to think, to understand why the locket burned and why the mirror flickered as I passed it, showing not just my reflection, but a glimpse of St. Bride's ruins as if calling me there. That night, I dreamed of the cloaked woman again, standing in the ruins, her key glowing like starlight. "Beware the thief who wears your face," she whispered, her voice echoing in my bones. I woke with a start, the locket hot against my chest. The words lingered, a warning I couldn't ignore. Jessica wasn't just my daughter. She was a thief, and she was coming back. 3 weeks later, she arrived not alone, but with Brian and my grandchildren Emma and Tyler, ages 8 and 12. The sight of them stepping out of a rental car outside the showroom was a masterstroke of manipulation, and despite everything, I felt a pang of longing. Emma's gap-toothed smile, Tyler's lanky frame, they'd grown so much in 8 months. But Jessica's expression, a mix of feigned remorse and familiar disdain, set my nerves on edge. The locket pulsed, and I gripped it, grounding myself. Grandma Margaret, Emma shrieked, running toward me. I knelt, catching her in my arms, her warmth a reminder of what I'd lost and what I still loved. Tyler approached more slowly, his 12-year-old coolness betrayed by a shy grin. "Missed you?" he mumbled, and my heart clenched. Jessica and Brian lingered by the car, taking in the showroom's transformation. The warehouse, once a dusty relic, was now a beacon of elegance, with polished displays and climate-controlled cases showcasing our treasures. "This is not what I expected," Jessica said, her voice tinged with surprise. "I thought it'd be smaller, more rustic." Moira appeared, carrying a folder of appraisals, her smile sharp as a blade. "Ye must be Margaret's daughter," she said, her accent thick with intent. "I'm Moira McLeod, her business partner." Jessica's eyes widened at business partner, and I saw her recalculating, her plans shifting. Brian stepped forward, his charm as practiced as ever. "What kind of business?" he asked, dollar signs practically glinting in his eyes. "Antiques, estate sales appraisals," I said simply. "We've been quite successful." "Successful enough for this," Jessica observed, gesturing at the showroom, her tone carrying that old accusation of extravagance. Moira cut in smoothly. "When you're dealing with high-value items, presentation matters. Our clients expect professionalism." "Clients," Brian said, his interest piqued. Emma tugged my sleeve, her eyes wide. Grandma, this place looks like a museum. Can you show us? I smiled, grateful for the distraction. Of course, sweetheart. For the next hour, I gave the Emma and Tyler a tour their awe, a balm to my wary heart. Emma marveled at a collection of Victorian dolls, while Tyler was drawn to a 16th century Scottish dirk, its blade gleaming with history. Is this real? He asked. Completely authentic, I said. It belonged to a Highland clan chief. We're selling it next month for $12,000. Jessica, trailing behind, stopped to examine price tags, her eyes calculating. 12,000 for a knife. She said, her voice a mix of awe and greed. For a piece of documented history, I corrected, watching her closely. The locket warmed again, a silent alarm. Jessica's praise came too easily, her apologies too polished. Mom, this is incredible, she said. You've built something amazing here. The old Margaret would have melted. The new Margaret, forged in Kilbride's fires, saw the setup for what it was. What do you want, Jessica? I asked quietly, drawing her aside as the children explored. She blinked, feigning innocence. Can't I just be proud of you? You can. I said, my voice steady, but that's not why you're here. She glanced around, her mask slipping. Okay, fine. I'm impressed. But I'm also worried. You're out here alone in a foreign country with this woman. She gestured toward Moira, who was showing Tyler how to hold the dirk. What if she's using you, your knowledge, your skills? The irony was staggering. Jessica, who'd stolen my savings and abandoned me, was worried about me being used. Moira saved me. I said, my voice cold. When you left me here, she gave me shelter, friendship, a purpose. Everything I have now is because of her. But are you sure she's not taking advantage? Jessica pressed, leaning closer. You're 67, Mom. You shouldn't be living like this, surrounded by strangers. Come home to Minnesota. Let your family take care of you. Family, I said, my voice sharp. You mean the family that stole my savings and left me stranded? Jessica flinched. But her recovery was swift. We made a mistake, a terrible one. Brian and I were stressed fighting. We took it out on you, and I'm so sorry. We want to make it right. Her words were rehearsed, her eyes too bright. The locket burned, and I saw a flicker in the showroom's window, a reflection of the cloaked woman watching. I took a breath, steadying myself. I'll think about it, I said, knowing I was stepping into dangerous waters. That evening, I agreed to dinner with Jessica, Brian, and the children at their hotel in the next village. The locket stayed hot against my skin, a constant reminder of the warning, beware the thief who wears your face. At the hotel, Jessica was charming, asking about the showroom, praising my auction successes, apologizing again with a sincerity that almost felt real. I've been seeing a therapist, she said over dessert while Emma and Tyler played with tablets. She's helped me see what I did was abusive, not just cruel. I want to be the daughter you deserve, Mom. The word abusive hung between us, a truth she'd never acknowledged before. I wanted to believe her, but the locket's heat told me otherwise. What does that look like? I asked. Being a real family again. It means time together, she said, taking my hand. The kids knowing their grandmother. Us not taking you for granted. Emma looked up, her eyes hopeful. Are you coming home with us? Grandma? The question pierced me, but I saw Jessica's calculated glance. I don't know, sweetheart, I said. Tyler piped up. We could visit you here. This place is cool. Jessica smiled, seizing the opening. We could help with your business, Mom. Brian's great with marketing. He could build a website, expand your reach. Brian nodded. This has real potential, Margaret. With the right strategy, you could go beyond Scotland. For a moment, I let myself imagine it, a reconciled family, my grandchildren, close, a business spanning continents. It was seductive, a dream I'd clung to for years. But the locket's heat and the cloaked woman's warning held me back. I smiled, keeping my voice neutral. That's a lot to consider. Let's talk more tomorrow. Back at the inn, I lay awake, the journal open beside me. My great-grandmother's words spoke of the MacLeod's duty to protect the Glen's light, a power tied to truth and justice. The locket glowed faintly, and I felt her presence urging me to stay sharp. Then I heard voices outside, carried by the quiet night. Jessica and Brian stood outside their hotel, their words drifting through my open window. Told you this was a waste of time, Brian said, his voice low. She's not going to hand over the business. She might, Jessica replied. Did you see how she reacted to Emma? She wants to believe we've changed. If she doesn't, we go to Plan B. My blood turned to ice. Plan B. Brian said, hesitant. It's risky. What if she finds out? She won't. Jessica said, her voice hard. She's 67 alone in a foreign country. Who's going to believe her over us? One way or another, we're not leaving Scotland empty-handed. I closed the window, my heart pounding. Jessica hadn't come to reconcile. She'd come to steal again, drawn by the news of my auction successes, likely from an article I'd seen online, featuring me and Moira in our showroom. The locket burned, and in the mirror I saw her again, the cloaked woman, her eyes blazing with fury. Claim your truth, she whispered, and the mirror went dark. I called Moira, my voice steady despite the rage coursing through me. It's not over, I said. Jessica's planning something. I heard them talking about a Plan B. They're after the business. Moira's response was immediate, her voice cold with resolve. Then we give 'em something to chase. Let's set a trap, lass. The next morning, over coffee, Moira outlined a plan so elegant it felt like something the Highlands themselves had whispered to her. They think they can con ye out of your legacy, she said, her eyes glinting. So we let 'em think they're winning. Ye pretend to believe their act agree to go back to Minnesota, but say ye need to liquidate your share of the business first. And then I asked the locket warm against my chest. We set up fake accounts, false transfers, fabricated sales, she said. They'll think they're stealing a fortune, but they'll get nothing. And in the process, they'll reveal their true selves. The plan was risky, but the locket's pulse urged me forward. I called Jessica, my voice carefully soft. I've been thinking about what you said, about family, about coming home. I think you're right. The silence on the other end was thick with her suppressed excitement. Really, Mom? You mean it? I do, I said. But it's complicated. I can't just walk away from the business. There's inventory to sell, accounts to close, money to transfer. I'd need your help, especially with the banking. Of course, she said quickly. Brian's great with international finance. We can stay longer, help you wrap things up. I smiled, though she couldn't see it. That would be wonderful. Over the next week, Jessica and Brian became my shadows, their eagerness barely concealed. They helped move inventory, our least valuable pieces, which we secretly stored elsewhere, telling them we'd sold them. They assisted with closing bank accounts, actually opening fake ones with minimal balances. Jessica played the devoted daughter perfectly. Her apologies polished her concern almost convincing. If I hadn't overheard their conversation, I might have believed her. Each night, I consulted the journal, its pages revealing more about the MacLeod's power. My great-grandmother wrote of the locket as a talisman amplifying truth and exposing lies. When I wore it near Jessica, it burned hotter as if sensing her deception. The mirror showed fleeting images of saint brides, the cloaked woman pointing to a hidden truth I hadn't yet found. I visited the ruins again, drawn by an instinct I couldn't name. Beneath another stone, I found a small, carved box containing a ring, its stone glowing faintly green like the glen itself. The journal called it the Eye of the Glen, a relic of truth. When I slipped it on, the world sharpened, as if I could see through lies. On the 8th day, Brian proposed transferring a large sum, 200,000, supposedly from our best sales, to an American account he'd set up. International transfers are tricky, he said, his charm slick. We'll route it through a holding account first. Avoid taxes and fees. Your money, of course. Jessica added her eyes, too bright. We're just helping with the technical side. I nodded, the ring warm on my finger. That makes sense. You're so much better at this than I am. They exchanged a glance, thinking they'd won. That night, I met Moira and Angus's solicitor cousin, James McLeod, in the pub. Everything's ready, James said, laying out fake transfer documents and monitored accounts. If they try to access these, they're committing fraud. You sure about this, Margaret? I'm sure, I said, the locket and ring pulsing in unison. They stole from me once. I won't let them do it again. Moira grinned. They made their choice when they decided to con ye. Now they'll face the consequences. As I returned to my room, the mirror glowed, and the cloaked woman appeared. Her voice clear. The truth is your power. Use it. I nodded, feeling the weight of my heritage settle over me. Jessica thought she could steal my future. She had no idea she was facing a MacLeod armed with the light of the Glen. The air in Kilbride was electric, as if the Highlands themselves were holding their breath. The showroom of MacLeod and Caldwell Antiquities gleamed with purpose, its treasures. Victorian silver, Edinburgh crystal, rare books standing as silent witnesses to the battle I was about to wage. At 67, I'd been abandoned here by my daughter Jessica, stripped of my savings, and left with $43 and a dead phone. But in the months since I'd uncovered my MacLeod heritage, a legacy of ancient relics and a power called the Light of the Glen. The locket around my neck and the ring on my finger etched with the MacLeod crest pulsed with warmth, as if they knew what was coming. Jessica and Brian thought they could steal my future. They were about to learn I was no longer the mother they'd betrayed. I'm Margaret Caldwell, and this is how I set a trap to expose my daughter's greed, faced her in a final reckoning, and claimed the truth that had been mine all along. The plan was Moira's brainchild, refined with the precision of a Highland storm. Jessica and Brian, lured by the promise of my showroom's wealth, had spent the past week playing the role of devoted family, helping me liquidate assets to return to Minnesota. Their apologies were polished, their concern for my well-being a carefully crafted lie. But I'd overheard their true intentions, a plan B to seize my profits and the locket and wring relics of my MacLeod ancestors burned with warning whenever they were near. The journal of my great-grandmother, Margaret MacLeod, spoke of these talismans as amplifiers of truth, and in the cracked mirror of the Shepherd's Rest, I saw her cloaked figure nightly urging me to use the light. Now it was time. Moira and I had spent days setting the trap with help from James MacLeod, a solicitor and distant cousin who'd verified my ownership of the MacLeod estate's heirlooms. We'd created a series of fake bank accounts, each linked to fabricated sales of low-value inventory we'd moved to a secure location. The centerpiece was a supposed £200,000 transfer from the sale of a second Nasmyth painting, a fiction designed to tempt Jessica and Brian into revealing their greed. James had ensured the accounts were monitored by a friend in the Edinburgh police, ready to catch any attempt at fraud. They'll think they're stealing a fortune. Moira had said her grin fierce, but they'll be stealing their own downfall. This morning, the trap was ready to spring. Jessica and Brian arrived at the showroom, their eagerness barely masked. Emma and Tyler. My grandchildren were with them, their presence a calculated move to soften me. Emma hugged me tightly, her 8-year-old warmth stirring a pang of longing, while Tyler, 12 and reserved, offered a shy smile. "Can we help in the shop today?" Grandma Emma asked, her eyes bright. I smiled, my heart heavy, but my resolve firm. "Not today, sweetheart. I've got some boring paperwork to finish. Why don't you and Tyler explore the village with Moira?" Moira appeared right on cue, her accent warm but her eyes sharp. "Aye, there's a wee museum in the next village. Old swords and tartans, perfect for young adventurers." The children cheered, oblivious to the tension, and Moira led them out, leaving me alone with Jessica and Brian. The showroom was quiet, the air thick with anticipation. The locket burned against my chest, the ring glowing faintly green on my finger, its stone, the eye of the glen sharpening my senses. I could almost feel their lies like shadows curling around their words. So I said, sitting at a polished table covered with fake documents, "You've been a huge help with the banking. I think we're ready to transfer the big sale." Brian leaned forward, his charm slick as ever. "The 200 pounds, 1,000 from the Nasmith sale. We've got the holding account ready. Just need your authorization to move it to the U.S." Jessica nodded, her smile too perfect. "It's a lot of money, Mom. We'll make sure it's safe so you can start fresh in Minnesota with us." The locket's heat was almost painful, but I kept my voice steady. "I appreciate that. Let's go over the details one more time." I handed them a fabricated transfer form, its numbers meticulously crafted to look legitimate. James had ensured the account was real, but empty, linked to a digital trail that would flag any unauthorized access. Brian scanned the form, his eyes gleaming with greed. "Looks good," he said, typing on his laptop. "I'll initiate the transfer now. It'll route through our holding account first for security." Of course, I said, watching closely. The ring's glow intensified, and for a moment I saw their intentions as clearly as if they'd spoken them aloud, a plan to siphon the money into an offshore account, leaving me with nothing. The journal had been right. The eye of the glen revealed truth. As Brian typed, Jessica reached for my hand, her touch calculated. "I'm so glad we're doing this together," she said. "It feels like we're a family again." The words were a dagger twisting in the wound of her betrayal. I pulled my hand back, the locket pulsing. "Family doesn't steal, Jessica," I said softly, my voice carrying a strength I hadn't known I possessed. Her smile faltered, but she recovered quickly. "What are you talking about, Mom?" I stood, the ring's glow steadying me. "I heard you and Brian outside your hotel. Plan B. You're not here to reconcile. You're here to take what I've built." Brian froze, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. Jessica's face hardened, the mask slipping completely. "You're paranoid," she snapped. "We're trying to help you, and this is how you thank us." "Help?" I said, my voice rising. "Like you helped yourself to my $60,000, forged my signature, drained my savings, then left me here to rot. That kind of help." The showroom seemed to hum, the air charged with the relic's energy. The mirror in the corner flickered, and I saw her, my great-grandmother, Margaret MacLeod, her cloaked figure standing in St. Bride's ruins, her eyes blazing with approval. "Use the light," she whispered, and the locket burned hotter, urging me forward. Brian stood, his charm replaced by a scowl. "You're making a mistake, Margaret. You're old alone in a foreign country. No one's going to believe you over us." "That's where you're wrong," I said, my voice steady as stone. "I'm not alone, and I have proof." I pulled out my phone, playing a recording Moira had helped me make a clear capture of their conversation about Plan B recorded through my window that night. Their voices filled the room, damning them with every word. Jessica's face paled, and Brian's hands clenched into fists. "You can't do this," he said, his voice low. "I already have," I said. "Those accounts you're trying to access. They're fake, monitored by the police. Every move you've made since you got here has been watched." Jessica lunged for the phone, but I stepped back, the ring's glow flaring. For a moment, the air shimmered, and I felt the Glen's light surge through me, a power that made my voice thunder. "Enough," I said, and they froze, as if the Highlands themselves had commanded it. "You stole from me, abandoned me, and now you're trying to take what I've built, but I'm not your victim anymore." Jessica's eyes filled with tears, but they were crocodile tears, as false as her apologies. "Mom, please. Think about Emma and Tyler. They need their grandmother." The mention of my grandchildren was a low blow, but the locket steadied me. "They'll always have me," I said. "But you've lost that right. If you try to contact me again, I'll press charges for the $60,000 you stole. Forgery, fraud, elder abuse, the police have everything they need." Brian scoffed, but his bravado was thin. "You wouldn't dare. You're too weak to follow through." I laughed, a sound that surprised even me. "Weak. I've built a business from nothing, reclaimed a legacy you can't even comprehend. I'm a McLeod, and this is my home. You're the ones who don't belong here." The mirror flared, and for a moment I saw not just my great-grandmother, but a line of women, their faces like mine, their eyes blazing with the Glen's light. The locket and ring pulsed in unison, and I felt their strength flow through me, a lineage of resilience and truth. Jessica and Brian backed toward the door, their confidence crumbling. "You'll regret this," Jessica said, her voice trembling with rage. "No," I said, my voice calm but unyielding. "You will." As they left, the showroom seemed to exhale, the relic's energy settling. Moira returned with the children, her face grim but triumphant. "Police got the alert," she said quietly. "They tried to access the account 10 minutes ago. James is filing the report now." I nodded, my heart heavy but resolute. Emma and Tyler ran to me, unaware of the storm. "Did we miss anything fun?" Emma asked. I knelt, hugging them tightly. "Just some grown-up stuff," I said. "But you're always welcome here." "Okay." Tyler frowned, sensing the tension. "Are Mom and Dad mad?" "They're working some things out," I said, choosing my words carefully. "But you two are my treasures, no matter what." That night, I called Jessica one last time, the locket and ring glowing softly. "This is your only warning," I said when she answered. "Stay away from me, from Kilbride, from my business. If you try to manipulate me or the children again, I'll use every resource I have to hold you accountable." Jessica's voice was venomous. "You're cutting off your own daughter." "What kind of mother does that?" "The kind who's done being a victim," I said. "You made your choice when you stole from me, when you left me here. I'm choosing myself now." I hung up before she could respond, the finality of it like a door slamming shut. The mirror flickered, and my great-grandmother's image appeared, her smile proud. "You've claimed the truth," she whispered, and the locket cooled its work done. The next morning, James confirmed the police had enough evidence to pursue charges if I chose to press them. For now, I held off, knowing the threat was enough to keep Jessica and Brian at bay. Moira poured us whiskey in the pub, raising her glass. "To the McLeods," she said, "and to ye, Margaret, for showing 'em what you're made of." I clinked my glass against hers, the ring glinting on my finger. "To truth," I said, feeling the Glen's light settle in my bones. Jessica had thought she could break me, but she'd only set me free. Kilbride, The relics my ancestors, they'd given me a power I was only beginning to understand. And I wasn't done claiming it. The morning sun spilled over Kilbride, bathing the village in a golden glow that felt like a blessing from the Highlands themselves. I stood in the showroom of MacLeod and Caldwell Antiquities, surrounded by treasures that were more than objects. They were my legacy reclaimed from the ashes of betrayal. The locket around my neck, engraved with the MacLeod crest, rested cool against my skin, its work complete. The ring on my finger, the eye of the glen, glimmered faintly as if content with the truth I'd claimed. At 67, I'd been abandoned here by my daughter Jessica, left with $40 and a heart shattered by her greed. But Kilbride had given me more than refuge. It had given me a new life, a heritage, and a power I was only beginning to understand. The cloaked woman in my dreams, my great-grandmother Margaret MacLeod, no longer appeared. But I felt her presence in the wind, in the stones, in the light of the glen. I'm Margaret Caldwell, and this is how I found peace in the Highlands, shared the lessons of my journey, and became a beacon for others who'd lost their way. 6 months had passed since the confrontation in the showroom, where I'd set a trap to expose Jessica and Brian's scheme to steal my newfound wealth. The fake bank accounts monitored by the Edinburgh police had caught their attempt at fraud, and the recording of their Plan B ensured they'd never dare return. James MacLeod, my solicitor cousin, had filed the necessary reports, leaving the door open for charges if they ever tried to contact me again. But they didn't. Word reached me through a mutual friend in Minnesota that Jessica and Brian had separated, their marriage crumbling under the weight of their failed scheme and mounting debts. I felt no satisfaction in their downfall, only a quiet relief that they were no longer my burden. The showroom had become a cornerstone of Kilbride drawing collectors from across Scotland and beyond. The Nasmyth paintings' sale for $47,000 had been just the beginning. Moira and I sold a set of Wedgwood china for $800,000, a collection of rare books for £12,000, and a Victorian locket unrelated to my own for $3,500. Each sale strengthened our partnership. Our profits split 60-40 as agreed, and the showroom's reputation grew. A local newspaper ran a feature on us titled, "The Highland Treasure Keepers Praising Our Transformation of a Forgotten Warehouse into a Cultural Gem." The article didn't mention Jessica or the betrayal that had brought me here, but it didn't need to. My triumph spoke for itself. The mystical elements of Kilbride lingered, though their urgency had faded. The cracked mirror in the Shepherd's Rest no longer flickered with my great-grandmother's image, but its surface held a quiet depth, as if it remembered her. The iron key to the warehouse, etched with swirling patterns, no longer glowed, but I kept it close, a reminder of the doors it had unlocked, both literal and metaphorical. The journal of Margaret MacLeod with its tales of the glen's light rested on my bedside table, its final pages, a guide to the relic's power. The locket holds truth. The ring reveals lies, and the glen binds them to those who claim their strength. One evening, as I polished a set of Edinburgh crystal, Moira joined me in the showroom, her graying hair catching the light. "You've changed this place, Margaret," she said, her voice warm. "And it's changed ye." I smiled, the locket cool against my chest. "I came here broken, Moira. You gave me a chance to rebuild not just the showroom, but myself." She waved a hand, dismissive but pleased. "Ach, ye did the hard work. I just gave ye a nudge. And maybe the Highlands helped a bit." The Highlands. I felt their presence every day, the wind that sang through the heather, the stones of St. Bride's ruins that seemed to whisper my name. I'd visited the ruins often since finding the ring drawn to their quiet power. One afternoon, beneath a hidden stone, I'd found a final relic, a small silver brooch shaped like a stag, the MacLeod crest. When I pinned it to my scarf, the air shimmered, and I felt a surge of peace, as if my ancestors were saying, "You are enough." The brooch became my talisman worn alongside the locket, and ring a trinity of strength. The journal hinted that these relics were tied to Kilbride's thin place, where the veil between worlds was weak. I didn't fully understand their power, but I felt it in my bones, a clarity, a resilience, a connection to something greater. The cloaked woman no longer haunted my dreams, but her final words echoed, "You've claimed it all." And I had not just the treasures, but my place in the world. The showroom wasn't just a business, it was a haven for others seeking their own rebirth. One day, a woman in her 60s arrived, her eyes shadowed with a familiar pain. She introduced herself as Eleanor, a retired teacher from Glasgow, and shared a story that mirrored my own, a son who'd manipulated her finances, leaving her isolated and doubting her worth. "I read about you in the paper," she said, her voice trembling. "You started over." How I poured her tea, the locket warm with encouragement. "I was abandoned here," I said, "but I found people who believed in me. Moira, this village, even my ancestors, they showed me I was stronger than I thought. You are too." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. "I want to believe that." Then I said, placing a hand on hers, "It's never too late to claim your truth. Start small, find something you love, something you're good at. Let it anchor you." She returned the next week, bringing a friend with a similar story. Word spread, and soon women from across Scotland visited, drawn by the newspaper article and whispers of Kilbride's magic. I listened to their stories, shared my own, and offered what I'd learned. You are not defined by those who hurt you. Your strength is yours to claim. The locket glowed faintly during these talks, as if my ancestors approved. One evening, as I closed the showroom, a letter arrived forwarded from my old address in Minnesota. It was from Emma, my granddaughter, written in her careful 8-year-old script. "Dear Grandma, I miss you. Mom says we can't visit, but I want to see your shop. I drew you a picture of Scotland." Enclosed was a crayon drawing of heather-covered hills, a stag standing proudly in the foreground. Tyler had added a note. "You're awesome, Grandma. Don't tell Mom I said that." I clutched the letter, tears welling but not falling. I'd lost my daughter, but not my grandchildren. I wrote back, promising they could visit whenever they wanted, that Kilbride would always be their home. The locket warmed, and in the mirror, I caught a glimpse of the stag from Emma's drawing, its antlers gleaming like moonlight. The Highlands were watching, and they approved. As winter settled over Kilbride, the showroom thrived, and so did I. Moira and I planned a spring auction featuring a newly discovered MacLeod heirloom, a set of silver candlesticks worth 10,000. Duncan MacLeod, my dying cousin, visited one last time, his face frail but peaceful. "You've done us proud, Margaret," he said, handing me a final document, a deed transferring a small plot of land near St. Bride's to me. "Build something there," he said. "A place for the MacLeods to rest." I did. With Moira's help, I turned the plot into a garden planting heather and rowan trees, a sanctuary for reflection. At its center, I placed a stone, engraved with the MacLeod crest, a tribute to my ancestors. The locket ring and brooch glowed as I set the stone, and the wind sang a melody of peace. Sitting in the garden one evening, I thought of the women I'd met, the stories we'd shared. I'd been abandoned, betrayed, stripped of everything I'd thought defined me. But Kilbride had given me more, a family not of blood, but of spirit. A legacy not of wealth, but of strength. Jessica's cruelty had been a catalyst pushing me to find the truth within myself. I was no longer just a mother, a grandmother, a curator. I was a MacLeod, a keeper of the Glen's light, and my story was far from over. To those who feel broken, I say this. It's never too late to start again. Your pain is not your end, it's your beginning. Find your truth, claim your strength, and let the world see who you are. The Highlands taught me that, and I'll carry it forever.